for 0, 1, and 2, you can see the answer skews heavily toward 6 through 10 and 11 or more. And the median number of classmates seen socially is 5. So we do spend time with each other. Although, while we hang out, we may not be best friends forever. This question was, of your 3 closest friends, how many were classmates at HBS? And the median answer is 0. So we socialize. We wish we networked more, but let's not get carried away. Now, as I mentioned, there is one significant skew in the answers, and that is the respondents skew heavily toward attendees. If you answered the question, you were almost 7 times more likely to attend the reunion, and we'll see why that's relevant in a few more slides. We were about 50-50 to attend any reunion, and given where we are geographically, that seems pretty impressive. The median number of reunions attended so far is 3 out of 5. Okay, let's go on to the safe topics. How would you characterize yourself politically? You gave people the option of liberal, moderate, conservative, or the ever-popular fiscally conservative, but socially liberal, and people jumped all over that. Nobody was so right-wing as to characterize themselves as Glenn Beck, although we did have one classmate who thought himself as another Al Franken. So if you were socially liberal but fiscally conservative, what did that mean? Well, for us, it meant you voted for Obama in 2008. An overwhelming number of people voted for Obama compared to Palin, of the people who actually did vote. Some people were candid enough to admit that, yes, at age 51, I'm not yet registered to vote. 9% are not Americans, so we had to back that out of the answers. Here's part of the answer, I think, why Obama won 3 years ago. 0% of the self-identified liberals voted for McCain, but 7% of the self-identified conservatives voted for Obama. And I think that's a big part of what happened in 2008. In our class, those who characterize themselves as fiscally conservative and socially liberal voted 65% for Obama, as did our one self-described. While that number may or may not surprise you, I think what will surprise you is how much we've changed in the last 25 years. This is the result of the Harvard News poll in 1986. Back then, a majority of us called ourselves Republican.
We didn't change.
And these numbers are the craziest numbers in the presentation. In 1984, we were overwhelmingly supportive of Ronald Reagan, even to the point where Reagan won in the largest electoral landslide in history with 58.8% of the national vote. We voted even 4.7% more toward the Republicans. Contrast to 25 years later. The voter turnout in 2008 was 64.1%, the highest in over a century, presumably boosted by infrequent voters who voted for Obama. So Obama benefited from a lot of what I'll call exogenous forces and only received 52.9% of the national vote. In contrast, we voted 11 percentage basis points, or 1,100 basis points more in Obama's direction. So politically, we've gone from slightly on one end of the spectrum, well in the other direction. So we are the opposite of the old adage, those who are not liberals when young have no heart, those who are not conservatives later in life have no head. We had no heart as young people. Do you consider yourself religious? This is the most evenly distributed answer of any question in the survey. Do you believe in an anthropomorphic supreme being? And if so, does he or she listen to the prayers of individuals? I do not believe in a supreme being. I believe in a supreme being who guides the universe solely in a macro fashion. Doesn't seem to listen to my prayers. I believe in a supreme being who listens to individual prayers, and then finally, anthropomorphic. So we're all over the place from a religious standpoint. And you'll notice that in every classroom now is a community value statement, which we didn't have 25 years ago, which describes how we all should aspire to treating each other with more dignity and respect. And the universities are obviously trying to encourage and inculcate diversity. And if they want more diversity, they should really emulate us, because we are extremely diverse in a religious fashion, except for those who are confused by the word anthropomorphic. Do you believe that America is a better place to live and work now compared to 1986? This survey question was answered in June. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if the answer to the same question today, the answers will be getting worse, not better. I think most of us would agree that we were lucky to get out when we did, because the next 25 years are probably going to be harder for the students that are here now. But even though we're glad we got out when we did, and we're glad we're not going to be graduating in 2012, we're still reasonably optimistic that the future will look better. And maybe that's because, like Scarlett O'Hara, we believe that after all, tomorrow is another day. All right, final section. Where are we today, and where will we be tomorrow? First of all, speaking of the recession, has the post-2008 recession caused you to consciously economize or otherwise had a tangible impact on your life? The answer, clearly, it has. But even though we've started to economize, it doesn't mean we don't like our toys, because we do like our toys. Which of the following do you own or have? Not surprisingly, most of us have at least 2 cars. But what surprised me is that 26% of us said that we owned a manual transmission car. Now, you may not be a car fan, so you may or may not know if that number means anything. Well, compare that to what's happening around us. Although almost a quarter of cars were manual transmission in 1986, because there's more traffic, more congestion, people now text and cell phones all the time. They stop by the Starbucks to pick up a latte before they get on the highway. People now are not willing to devote, one of their hands to the gear shift. And as of now, only 6.5% of cars on the highway have manual transmission. So when I said, wait a minute, our class has more than quadruple the number of people that own manual transmission cars, could that be right? So my first thought was, well, maybe that's just because we're inflated by the European residents. And as you can see, sure enough, a European has a better than 50-50 chance of owning a manual transmission car. Asians with their small roads, small cars, also likely to have manual transmission. But even if you back out the Europeans and the Asians, 23% of the U.S. residents own a manual transmission car, in contrast to giant demographic trends that are affecting the car industry. So the conclusion is we like to shift our own gears. All right, which of the following do you own or have? Although we like to drive stick shift cars, we're not crazy enough to go so far as to own a motorcycle. A quarter of us own a boat. 10% of us are doing well enough to have an airplane or a NetJets or other fractional aircraft ownership plans. 42% of us have a vacation home. And 17% of us own a gun. Well, when I saw the 17%, I had the same reaction as the manual transmission cars. I was like, wow, that just sounds wrong. So, all right, let me test some stereotypes. I'll bet part of it is driven by those liberal Europeans who don't believe that owning guns is a right guaranteed by the Second Amendment. And sure enough, 0 European residents own a gun. And so I wanted to test the stereotypes in the U.S. Those New England types in their ivory tower Ivy League universities, they're not the type to own guns either. And sure enough, only 7% of the New England people own guns. Well, who does own guns? Well, it's the good old boys in the South, followed mostly by the cowboys out west. So you back out all the people who are not likely to own guns, those that are likely to own guns, and what other anomalies are there? Wow, turns out 18% of Asians own guns. Who knew? Apparently, you know, after having a few drinks tonight, do not mess with the Asians. Let me pack a heat. Which of the following do you own or have? Well, we seem to have embraced iPods. We're slowly working our way through Facebook and Twitter. 18% of us have our own website or blog. And 25% of us have more than 25 pairs of shoes. I said, wait a minute. I think the women in the class are a little aggressive. But it turns out that's not the case. Only 58% of the women have more than 25 pairs of shoes, and 15% of the men will admit to being a little bit of a clothes horse. And 8% of the class still has that portable. I think he held on to it for 25 years, hang on to it for another 25 years, because soon that thing's going to be valuable and the Smithsonian will come to Which of the following have you done? A minority of us have skydived or bungee jumped. Almost a third of us have completed a marathon. That's everyone. Notice that we use the word completed, not participated. Over a third of us have founded a company, which eventually employed at least 25 people. 14% have been CEO, CFO, or C-something-o of a Fortune 1000 company. And 18% of us say that we have dated somebody that we met online. Now, I don't know if 18 strikes you as high or low, so I said, well, let's just compare that to the number of people that actually either were or became single after the internet was around, and I randomly picked age 35 as when that era began. So the percent of the class that was not married by the internet age of what I selected as 35 years old was 18%. Well, that's a coincidence. So the conclusion is, if you were still single or became single in the internet age, you dated online. Which of the following have you done? Been tested for AIDS, 42%. And interestingly enough, I had classmates write to me afterwards, like, we had one group that said, yeah, you know, look, we're all married and respectable businessmen. You know, nobody's going to say yes to that. And somebody else wrote back and said, in this day and age, I expect nearly 100% to say yes. So, depending on where you sit, you're going to have a different perspective on that.